As promised, I'm going to deviate from just complaining about films and actually recommend some of the films that I've enjoyed. And I do like horror, so there must be something about it that I like. So this is the first one. It's on a film called Zygote. So Zygote is basically a 22-minute gut punch. If you can't spare 20 minutes to watch it, just imagine what it would be like to have Boss Rutan punch you in the spleen.
Ooh, he's bleeding.
Directed by the guy who made District 9, Zygote is available on YouTube for free. Zero money. If you type in Oat Studios, you'll find a bunch of their other work as well. It's really quite high-quality horror with extremely good special effects. Wow, I just realized how much that sounded like I was paid to promote them. To prove that I'm not, and to prove that there was still going to be some cynicism seeded into these videos, there is this film that they made called God, which is piss warm, and you should avoid it. There. But for the most part, Oat Studios are pumping out some really, really cool sci-fi and horror stuff. So what made Zygote not the usual pieces of shit that I review, which seems to be the absolute benchmark for horror these days? Anything that's not a complete dumpster fire, people get excited about, and it's unfortunate, but I do think Zygote is objectively a good film. Anyway, the locations were intricately constructed and thought out in this film. The props were amazing. I especially loved how in Zygote, the lighting changed due to the temperamentality of the failing facility it was set in. Yet the shots remain strategically lit and quite beautiful, despite the changing light conditions. It showed some technical prowess on their part. This film effectively amounted to a body horror. Some strange thing has decimated the population of this mining compound, and two people are left to figure a way out. One of them has no eyes, and one has an inferiority complex due to the fact that they're a human mine canary that's job is to go into asteroids and die if they find pockets of lethal gas.
Your job is to crawl down the mine shafts deep down into the asteroids. Your job is to die if you walk into a pocket of poison gas, right?
Why do they even need humans to go into the asteroids to die as a job, as a vocation, just to test for gases? If I remember correctly, this is only set 30 years into the future. Like, have fundamental human rights really slipped that far in 30 years? People do die in their workplaces, but if part of your job description was literally that you had to die, and that was you fulfilling your contract, wouldn't you think that that position might not be filled? Even though in the same story they literally described that they have synthetic people at their disposal who they stated wouldn't die if they were sent into an asteroid, still they get real people to do this job. There are hard-fought laws against this kind of bullshit on workplaces. And I don't think, or at least I hope they're not going anywhere anytime soon. But shit is pretty whack, so you never know. Despite some sort of inconsistencies with the film, it was still straight up one of the best short films I've seen, period. So I did some research on the backstory of Zygote, and apparently this is set in a future where asteroids rain down on Earth with a precarious mineral in them previously unknown to humans. The mining facility was constructed to harvest this mineral. Why the hell would there need to be on staff some Rambo guy who carries a gun around everywhere and speaks like his dad didn't hug him enough as a child? No one had any idea the threat posed to them when they started up the mining company. They were just going to mine some asteroid stuff, but of course, one of the last two remaining people in the whole facility has to be some special forces soldier instead of some blue-collar guy who has high blood pressure, like there probably would have been. Better have guns in case the rocks become evil, which they did, actually. I just realized how much I'm complaining about this film. It's actually very good. I'm just... Obviously, I have to get out of the entrenched cynicism that I have. Wow, this is meant to be a recommendation. I'll get to the good parts now, alright? So some spoilers are coming up because I have to talk about the antagonist of this film or else this is all going to be pointless. So go watch it now. It's free if you haven't seen it. It's 22 minutes. And have I passed enough time for you to find your mouse and click out? I hope so. So the beginning of the mayhem that led to this facility being desolated and all the people dying was that a strange light was emanating from the rocks that were mined from the asteroids. It got into someone's head and scrambled all their shit. Whatever this thing was began as a bunch of rat brains stitched together in a suit, with a bunch of pig organs as well, And I guess this is how the sentient light found a vessel for itself. We later see that there are indeed a bunch of rat brains and pig guts in some sort of like Darth Vader suit looking thing on an operating table. I didn't know what rat brains look like, so this was kind of a confusing scene, and since it was mentioned in the rapid fire exposition only once, it took me a second watch through to connect the dots. But that's probably more me having the attention span of a... What was that noise? Just joking. Even more frightening than a bunch of rat brains stitched together is that we learn that all 98 of the crew have been spliced together to create a monster. And this monster makes sounds that are reminiscent of what you'd expect maybe a bunch of people stitched together would sound like. And this is why I'm recommending this movie. It's one of the best body horror films that I've ever seen. The sounds that make it just like blind moaning and just human desperation. Like a bunch of people with muffled yells because their mouths and throats are buried in this massive flesh somewhere. Ugh, there's the shudder. Some of the other sound effects were really cool as well. And I definitely perked up in my chair when that heavy gun was pulled out and I heard the sounds of the bullets firing. It was really cool. The monster was really well designed and basically what's standard for Oat Studios. It was incredibly animated as well. Its head was like this doner kebab and it had these hands stitched to it so that it could hold itself up and wouldn't topple over, because it was this kind of mismatched thing using body parts from probably a species that it didn't belong to and didn't sort of know the function of in the beginning. So it's like, I just imagine it like compiling all these limbs and realizing that it's stitched things in the wrong place and made parts of it too heavy and it can't run. There were some awesome scenes of this thing having to get through doors to find the protagonist, who was the last remaining person on the team. Anyway, it's certainly worth checking out. Some of you may have heard about it if you're keeping up with like horror film news and stuff. But if you haven't, definitely recommend it. Thanks for stopping by. Catch you next time.